So, could you tell me your name and how old you are and what year you were born?
My name is George Lawrence Pacillo. I was born in 1924, 6 26 24.
And how old are you today?
And right now I'm 97 years old.
When's your birthday?
My birthday is on the 26th of June.
So you just turned
I
90.
just made it a little while ago, about a month.
Are you what are you planning for your what are you planning to do for your 100th birthday?
Uh, if I live to be 100 years old, I'm going to stay at home and get drunk.
What's your favorite liquor to get drunk with?
Well, my favorite liquor is cognac. It's a rich liquor, but it's worth it.
Do you still now? Were you born? Where were you born, by the way?
I was born on Deer Street, 8 Deer Street. And the woman who delivered me, her name was Mrs. Morano. And she lived on Deer Street. She was a midwife.
Now, something tells me that you're Italian.
That's right. I'm 100% Italian, but I'm an American citizen first, an Italian parent second.
Um, Tell me about what was it like growing up as an Italian boy in Portland, Maine?
It was really good because we didn't have too many cars, and people, would go to school, come back and play games. All the kids, I can still remember when I was about 7 or 8 years old playing ball on the street, because you could do that because there wasn't too many cars. You could play baseball, any basketball. You used to take the old crates and nail them to the pole and play basketball.
What was your favorite sport to play?
Basketball.
So you played basketball all the time?
I played basketball for, all the time. The first chance I could get, I played basketball. But I wasn't tall enough. The guy that went to school with me was 6'2", and he played center for Portland High. And his name was Frank Tatazic.
Did people in your family always have as good a memory as you have?
Oh, my mother and father always had a good memory because they could always tell when I was in trouble.
Did your parents live to have a long life?
Well, my mother was 94, my father was 92, and my oldest brother was 95. And I'm the baby of the family.
So you're just going to beat them all?
Yeah, I'm 97.
That's awesome.
So I'm the last one, by the way.
What is like some of your favorite memories of growing up in Portland?
My favorite memories is learning English and going to school, kindergarten. We had a kindergarten that was on 4th Street, and it was just about 250 feet from my house. And a woman by the name Mrs. Newhall ran it, and the janitor was Mr. DeLillo. And he was the janitor of that school. And that's where I learned English, going to school there. I used to go home, my parents talked Italian to me, and then I'd go to school and they would teach me English.
Now, can you still speak Italian?
Yes.
So, can you say something to me in Italian?
Uh,
Like how are you today?
Come sta gosh?
I'm good. And you can speak Italian fluently to anybody today?
Yep.
Yeah, amazing.
When I went to the service, I thought he'd send me to Italy because I could speak Italian, but they were afraid I might stay there and not do the work I'm supposed to do. So I went the other way.
You ended up in the Pacific?
Huh?
You went to the Pacific?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember the train station on the 4th Street, the train station that used to be down at the bottom of Mungo Hill? It was
Well, I remember the train used to come there by the custom house, and they would drop coal. A coal train used to come there, and the people would go down and pick up the coal as it fell off the cars and take it home and burn it. They kept warm in the winter, and a lot of people used to do that. What we used to do, when I grew up as a kid there, I used to go down the waterfront fishing a lot, and I would reel nets. At that time, I think it was 25 cents a net. When the gill netters used to come in, they'd have the nets would be all tangled, and used to reel them on a reel on top of the roofs near the sun so they would dry quick. And the nets had a sinker on one end and a float on the other. And the gill netters used to use a lot of those. And we'd go there and we'd reel a couple of nets a day and probably get 50 cents, and that's quite a bit of money at that time. And we always had a few pennies in our pocket.
What did Portland smell like back in the day? How did it smell?
Well, the only time it smelled was in the summertime. You could smell a lot of the fish. They used to grind up fish for fertilizer and stuff down. I think the name of the company was the Portland Fish Company. That's it. And they had one ship. It was called the Pacillo, and that was the gill netter. And they used to go out. They owned that boat, by the way. And that's the reason they used to have that boat there. And they had a fish company, too. And the people that had small boats used to go out and try to get horse mackerel. And when they get it, they bring them in to sell to the Portland Fish Company. A lot of those fish they'd have a mackerel run in the spring. And they'd go out and get as many mackerel they could. Their boats used to come in about that much out of the water and be loaded with. They'd take a chance, but they'd drive kind of slow.
Yeah. They wouldn't like any big waves hitting them, I take it.
No, they never had big waves.
Yeah. Did you get in many street fights growing up?
Well, very few, because we were all friendly. Now, I had 2, 3 very good friends. One of them was James Corrigan, the other one was Alexander Panarese, and the other one was, what the heck was his name? I think it was, I can't remember the third one's name. But we all went to school and we ran cross country. And we enjoyed doing that. And we had a pretty good time doing that.
How fast did you run?
Well, I used to run 2.5, 3.5 miles. And Ralph Corey was the coach. And he always had a good team. We won the championship, I think, 2 or 3 times, and we came in second in the race at Orono, the state meet, because our best man got sick, and we came in second. But if he didn't get sick, we'd have won it.
That's awesome.
So.
And that was from Portland High School?
Yeah. There's only 5 men on a team. And as a matter of fact, the Portland Press Herald ran a picture back then. I think it was 43 or 42 of all 5 of us coming in hand, winning the race against Gorham Normal up in Gorham. It was a school that taught teachers at that time.
How did you get along with the Irish and the Jews and the
Well,
English?
we never had any problems with the Irish. and the Jews and the Irish and the Italians all lived together. And we, as a matter of fact, we used to gamble together. We knew each other real well. And there was the Punskys. Sam Punsky had a drugstore on the corner of Franklin Street. And what's his name? Grassy's father had a cobbler next to him. But between the drugstore and the cobbler, there was a barroom. There's always a barroom there. And down the other corner, there was another barroom. Belonged to Brigadier Polino's father. And across the street today, Mokuchi's there. But at one time, there was Cartonio's store at that corner. And across from him was Tony Colello. He had a store there on the next corner. And on this side, there were bootleggers, Leo and what's his name? Mondarelli. Mondarelli was a bootlegger, and so was Leo. He was a bootlegger. Right around that time there.
How were the cops those days?
They never bothered you. If you were drunk and you were on the street, they would pick you up on the paddy wagon and take you home. They were really good.
I've heard stories of the cops being pretty hard. Like if you were.
Well, it all depends. If you treat them rough, they'll treat you rough. And they have the means to do it. No kidding. I mean, I knew one guy that was treated mean by a police officer. When that police officer retired, he was in charge of a hotel. And this guy would pick him out. Every time he went in that hotel, he would beat the shit out of him. Oops, excuse me. He would go after him all the time. And I won't mention his name because his name's still around.
Yeah.
So,
you gotta be careful.
yeah.
It's a small town.
Well,
Yeah. Now, did you ever spend much time around the Grand Trunk Railway, the big grain towers? They had the big grain towers. Did you ever go down and play around there at all?
I used to fish down the Grand Trunk right there on the end of the pier. And the ships used to come in there. They used to unload them, the longshoremen unload them every once in a while, especially when, this is the best part, when they're handling booze, they would drop a case by mistake. And they would keep that case, mark it down as brokerage. They would get their money back, the company would, but the longshoremen would drink all the booze. And they always did that. And we used to have a lot of ships coming down there. But today there's not too many. All it is cruise ships, I guess. But I remember when I growing up, we used to go down the waterfront. And we didn't reel nets anymore because fishing was a big thing at that time. And when those gill netters came in and the draggers came in, we used to jump down the hole and get paid about $10 for picking the fish, putting it in the basket, and taking them out of the hole.
Inside the ship?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you used to jump inside the
you used to go down. The draggers used to be out there for a week or two, but the gill netters go out for one day. The gill netters didn't have too much fish, but every once in a while they'd hire one guy to pitchfork the fish on the deck, put it in the basket. But the draggers would hire the guy for the day and pay him maybe $10 or $15. And down in the hole, they used to have it all iced up where they'd been out so long. They'd have all the ice. And that kept the fish from rotting. And when they came in, they just dump it out and that's it. Put it in the basket, take it out of the hole.
Now, you have a bicycle when you were a kid?
Yeah, I had a bicycle. I went from Portland to about 50 miles anyway to Portsmouth. We used to go on a ride like that for 50 miles all day, then come back. But it was good exercise.
So that exercise probably is one of the reasons you're around today.
Right. Well, this is the best part. You'll like this. When the war first started, I worked while I was going to high school, I worked for Mr. Pacillo. He was the guy in charge who owned the soda, Sunset Beverage, and Pacillo Distributors down Franklin Street. So all the guys were getting drafted going in the service, and he needed drivers real bad. And I worked on the soda with his son-in-law, Guido Party. I worked for his son-in-law, putting the bottles in the case and piling them up. So he came over to me because I had a license, driver's license, and I was 15 years old at that time. And he said, when you go home tonight, ask your mother and father if it's all right for you to handle beer, because you had to be 18 to handle it. So I said, well, all right. So I asked my mother and father. They said, sure, you can handle it, but you got to get your homework done first. They said, okay. So I told him. He said, all right. He said, you got a driver's license, haven't you? My brother got me the driver's license. He was working there too. And he got me the driver's license. And I took the boss's car to get my license when it was time. But I went all the way down there, and so I was handling beers. So I go to high school. When I come out of the high school, the truck's all loaded, and you got all the slips on the seat, and I would deliver all the stores in Westbrook. I had the Westbrook around, right close. And at that time, there was 357 barrooms in Westbrook. I mean, there was a lot. And I would go in, deliver to bars, the stores, and everything, and I'd have a lot of money. When I'd come in, I'd keep the money till the next day, and then I'd bring it in and give it to them, because I couldn't leave it on the car seat, because if somebody might take it.
You never worried about getting robbed?
Right. So that's it. I used to bring it in there, and I made good money. I was going to high school and probably making $300 a week. And that's a lot of cash.
Wow.
So I did that until I went in the service.
So it must have been hard to give up all that money.
I know it was hard, but hey, let's face it, you gotta go, you gotta go. So I went in the service anyway.
So did you have many girlfriends in high school?
Yeah, I had a girlfriend. I lived on Monjoy Hill. I'm trying to think of the name of the street. It's the last one on the right before you hit the promenade.
So it might have been Moody Street?
Huh?
Morning Street?
Morning Street, that's it.
Yeah.
She lived on Morning Street.
Gotcha, yeah. Yeah, well, we lived on Vesper. My family grew up in the corner of Moody and Vesper. That's where we're from. So we were like a block away from your girlfriend's house. Where my grandfather and my parents grew up, so you know. Now, what were like? Did you remember like a favorite Christmas with your family? When you were as a kid, do you remember any favorite? Like, is there anything that comes back as good memory, like a good particular time?
On Christmas, we used to all the families used to get together, all the in-laws and everything, and we'd all have a big party. Now, I remember, and we used to take a heck of a chance, we used to have candles on the Christmas tree, lit up too, that could catch fire and burn the whole house down. But they did hang them on the tree, and I guess they got a close eye on them. But that's the way it went anyway.
Was it special to have so many Italians in one area? Was it really nice and unique to do that?
Oh, it was good because you could, when they talked to you, you knew what they were saying. Most of the kids growing up there understood Italian because whenever they were asked something, they answered it back. So they knew what they were asked. So I know I did whenever anybody asked me anything. As I was growing up now, we used to play cards on the street with on the stairs. We play cards, and at night we had somebody would go around and tell stories, and we'd all gather. All the young fellas gathered while one guy told stories. He used to try to scare the heck out of you, but that's what they did anyway. And at night, as soon as it got dark, we headed home because the word was, if you're not home by 9 o'clock, you're gonna catch you know what. So that's why we all dispersed at 9 o'clock. And as we grew up, though, we used to gamble a lot. I mean, gamble a lot, very lot. We used to have the Banana Club where everybody went there. Used to play pinochle, rummy, all kinds of games. And we used to be in there. And there was one guy you remember. His name was Lou Bedell. He was a fight manager, but he ran the Banana Club also. And he had Willie Pep under his wing one day, and he said, this guy won't amount to anything. And Willie Pep won the championship. He could boot himself on the butt ever since. But he didn't think he'd do anything because he had long arms, but a thin body. And he figured somebody would really kill this guy. But the guy turned out to be a champ.
Did you spend much time over by the Eastern Cemetery, just sort of like hanging out in the old graveyard or anything like that?
On Munjoy Hill?
Yeah.
Well, now we go to Munjoy Hill. The corner store was by a Napolitano owned it, across from the cemetery. Then you go down further, it was Monument Street. And going up Monument Street, on the corner, there was a store, Russo store. You go around the corner, there's another store, Nappy store. And then you keep going up. On the right-hand side, Amoroso's lived. The chief of police, he lived on the right side. He had a brother, they used to refer to him as Nutty. That was his nickname, Nutty. And as you go up, there was Pastores that lived there. And on Kellogg Street, there was Sandora lived on Kellogg Street. But on the other street, going the other way, Freddie Rossi's. I don't know the name of the street, though.
Sheridan Street?
Sheridan Street. Rossi had a store there. Freddie Rossi.
Yeah.
And
now, did you ever climb the cliffs on the eastern, like over by the Fort Allen Park? Did you ever climb those cliffs over there where the trains are going by? Did you ever do anything like that at all?
Did you what?
The cliffs, over by Fort Allen Park. Did you ever play on the cliffs or anything?
Cliffs?
Yeah, the big cliffs that were down there.
Well, down by the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they had drop off. They used to have at one time places to undress there, but they did away with that or something. But there's a walkway down there. You could walk all the way down the end, and it wasn't too many cliffs. Only on the right-hand side there was where the railroad went by.
Right.
there was drop-offs down there on that side. And they had apple trees and stuff like that, little green apples. Used to be good.
For throwing at each other.
Yeah, a lot of them used to eat them. They were good eating too.
Yeah, I had some.
Yeah.
What did you think when, first of all, do you remember the fire that destroyed the Grand Trunk and the fire back in the 70s that burned all the piers down at the Grand Trunk area?
Oh, I don't remember that. Cause at that time, if the fire started at night, I'd be home.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
But
Well, how about what did you think when they tore down Franklin Street to put in marginal,
yeah, they put the arterial in.
What do you think? What did you feel about that?
Well, I was kind of lost there for a while because I think that Federal Street went all the way down. There was a church, a little Italian Protestant church on the corner by Mr. DeLillo. And the police station was there too. And across the street from the police station was Lincoln Park. And as you go down further, there was Piscobos lived there. And there was Taliano's store on the corner of Hampshire Street, then the St. Peter's Church going down that way. But they changed everything and they put the police station on the other side when that arterial went in. But a friend of mine used to own 2 or 3 houses there. You probably know him. His name was Gene Chiazzo. And he owned 2 or 3 houses there. But he used to work with me at Central Maine Power. That's how I got acquainted with him.
Were you upset that they were tearing down all those houses to build the Franklin Arterial? Did it bother you?
Well, I don't think I was here when they did that.
Okay.
I was probably overseas somewhere when they did that because I was surprised when I came back it was the arterial there.
So, like they
Deer
built.
Street was gone.
What's that?
The house was gone, Georgie. The house you grew up in was gone.
The what?
Deer Street was gone.
Oh yeah, Deer Street was gone, completely. The furniture company, what's the furniture company? Hub Furniture is at the bottom where I used to live, all the way up. Deer Street was disappeared. They tore all the houses down.
And did that make you sad?
Yeah, well, you figure the people lived there for years, and that's when they made the move to Munjoy Hill. Those people, most of them went to Munjoy Hill. They were, like I told you, they're Eddie Manning, Louis Flaherty, Sammy Cavallaros, and a lot of people. I'm trying to.
Albert Cavallaro, Sam's brother.
Albert.
Cavallaro. Yeah.
I don't remember Albert Cavallaro, but I remember
Sam.
Albert. Who's that guy that has the boat? Huh?
DeMillo.
Who?
DeMillo.
DeMillo. Albert DeMillo. I remember him.
Yeah.
And
tell me about going into the service. Did you sign up? Did you get drafted? And then tell me what happened.
well, when I went. Frankie and I were going in the service together. We tossed the coin. He won. So I ended up I wanted to go in the Navy. Well, we were right handy to water. I figured, well, we're going to the Navy. He says, well, I want to go in the Army. I said, oh, we'll flip a coin. He won. I went in the Army. He and I went in together. We stayed together through basic training. We were shipped down to South Carolina, Spartanburg, South Carolina, and we took training down to infantry training. So 3 months. When that 3 months was up, I got to tell you this first. while we were there, well, at that time, the people were death against the black people, down south especially. While we were there, we had a bus that used to come in every weekend so we could go into town, and he used to pick us all up. Then we had black workers, too, that used to work on the base. And when they got on the bus driver would say, "In the back of the bus." So they would get on the bus, and he was the back of the bus. Finally, when I got on the bus, he said, "The back of the bus." I said, "Whoa, I'm not black, I'm Italian." He says, "Get the hell off the bus." That's a joke. That's one I pass along all the time. But that's what happened. They used to take all the blacks, put them in the back of the bus. And they didn't care for blacks at that time. It's just one of those things. And I went there and took the 3 months training, and then we split up again. He went to Europe, I went to the Pacific. I landed in New Caledonia with a ship about 400 or 500 guys. From New Caledonia, we stayed there a couple of days, and we went to the Fiji Islands. From the Fiji Islands, we joined the 129th Infantry, because what happened on Guadalcanal, one of the regiments of the 37th Division got annihilated on Henderson Field with the Marines. So they sent the 129th with the 37th and made it the 3rd Regiment. So there was 145, 148, and 129. It made up the division, the 37th Division. And from Fiji, we trained at Guadalcanal, and the first place the Marines hit Bougainville. They met a company of Japs, and they annihilated them. Then they pulled out, and the ships started coming in, bringing supplies, and our outfit was the first outfit that hit there. We went in there, and we stayed there 1 whole year while they built a fighter and bomber strip, and we had to protect it. And while we were...
And that's in Bougainville? Was that in Bougainville?
Yeah.
Yeah.
While we were protecting it, the Japanese, about 200,000 of them, were on the other end of the island. And that's where they thought we were going to hit, but we didn't. So they traveled to the most densely jungle in the Pacific, on Bougainville, to attack us. But by that time, we had a fighter and bomber strip there, and we had all kinds of pillboxes and perimeters set up that when they did attack us, we had mines in front, barbed wire, we had artillery behind us. They didn't stand a chance. They were annihilated.
How many Japanese do you think died trying to attack?
Well, there were 200,000 of them, and they didn't take any prisoners. You figure it out.
Yeah.
So a lot of them got killed coming to us, and a lot of them died. Well, while we were on patrol, I was on the patrol, we had an artillery officer with us. And while we were out there, every day we used to send patrols out to make contact with the enemy, because we knew they were coming on after us. So while we were out there, this one day, about 2 miles out, we heard a lot of chopping. So we went down to investigate. We found out there was Japanese building huts down there about 2 miles out, and we knew they were going to hit us any time. So we went back to the artillery officer who was with us and told him to call in for artillery. So he called in for artillery and gave him his location. And they waited a while, and then finally the bombs were pretty close. So he called back and said, "Hey, those bombs are pretty close." He said, "We haven't fired any yet." So the Japs spotted us. We got the hell out of there going back. The next morning they hit us. And that's when the battle began.
So did the American artillery fire? At
Oh,
those-
the artillery was firing back 90s, 105s, 155s, and 240s also. And when they shook fired the 240, the ground would shake. So they would fire behind them and draw them in. While they draw them in, we could pick them off coming in. All the positions were filled. We had machine guns on the flanks, BARs in the middle, and riflemen. And that was the end of the Japanese Empire there. Then after the battle was all over, we went back to garrison. We had tents set up, we put tents up. We lived in a hole for 1 year. And then we lived on top of ground after the battle. We stayed there just about a year, and they said we were going to hit Luzon. So that's when we hit Luzon.
Now, was Bougainville, was that in the Philippines or was that in Guadalcanal?
No, it was an island by itself.
It was.
I think it was owned by the French.
I see.
Bougainville means flower.
I see.
That's what it means.
Did you have to pick up the dead Japanese?
I didn't have to touch any Japanese at all, just the ones I shot at. And we had a bulldozer come in, 2 or 3 bulldozers, would scrape them all up and put them in a big pile.
Yeah.
And that's where they would put them all.
Now,
Just cover them with dirt.
okay. They didn't
So if they ever want to get back to them and pick out their people, they could do it by doing that. But that's what we used to do. We never had to pick it up. We had a couple of guys who went around after the battle and pull up gold teeth, pull them out of the dead. But I didn't care for that. I figured that wasn't I wasn't going to do any of that crap. But
What kind of weapon did you use in that battle?
well, we had everything. We had.
What did you use?
I was a rifleman. I had what is 7.5
M1 or
M1,
Yeah.
right?
yeah, and
M1. That's the weapon that won the war. I always say that's the one. You know why, don't you? When you have the Germans, the Japanese, everybody else had this to do. Bang,
and reload constantly.
bang.
Yeah.
All we had to do was cock it back and put a clip in. And we could go bang, 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 bang 8 times. So that's what won the war. But we all had to learn, while I was in basic training, I had to learn the compass, the pistol, the M1, the carbine, machine gun, bazooka, everything the infantry uses. You got to use them all. And you take every one of us who would go out at night with a compass and about 4 or 5 guys and go follow the azimuth they give you on a piece of paper. Go all the way and come back, and you end up in the same place you started. We learned all about the compass. We learned everything, and how to put your gun back together blindfolded, and how to carry. And when somebody gets shot and he's leading you, the next man in line takes over automatically and keep going.
Did you lose a lot of friends in the war?
Well, yeah, I lost one guy was in my tent with me. His name was he was an Italian kid from California. His name was Nick Fulminetti from California. He was 19 years old when he got killed. He got the Distinguished Service Medal because he was one of those guys that was caught on the island on the Pasig River that couldn't get back over here. There was about 22 of some of those guys that got killed. They couldn't get back. They were cut off altogether. But that happens sometimes. Well, we got them all anyway. We went back and picked them up and put them in.
When Pearl Harbor was bombed, where were you?
When Pearl Harbor was bombed, I was working in Poland.
And do you remember that? You remember that moment?
I remember one thing. I'll remember. I've never forgotten it. When I was a young man, I went to the movies with my girlfriend. And while I was in the movies, it showed Paramount News, and it showed the Japanese occupying China. And it showed them invading China, digging the trench, putting all the Chinese lined up on their knees, shooting them in the back of their head and kicking them into the hole. And this is the part I never forgot. It showed them throwing babies in the air and catching them on the bayonets. That's another thing it showed. But at that time, somebody put my name in for something, and they drew it, and my daughter has a picture of selling war bonds in my name at the State Theater. And my name is on the marquee. George Pacillo, private George, because I was overseas. And they sold war bonds in my name. And they gave my mother a film of me plus pictures of me.
Were you, after Bougainville, did you go to the Philippines at that point?
Yeah.
Tell me about the Philippines.
Philippines, okay, this is the best part. In the Philippines, we got up after Clark Field, we started up and we got orders to don't travel anymore, stay put. My commander, my company commander said, dig in, we're here for 3 or 4 days. What the hell are we waiting for? He said, because MacArthur wants the 1st Cavalry to come in on Subic Bay, get into Manila before we get there, because his father was in charge of the 1st Cavalry during World War I. So he wanted the 1st Cavalry in Manila. So we sat down, and we looked on the other side, there was a brewery there called the Ballantrae Brewery. So my company commander said, dump the water and go over and get all the beer. You're going to be here for a few days. So we dumped the water out of the water tanks, went over and got all the beer, sat there and drank beer for 2 or 3 days. And we had sea ration cans and stuff we could eat.
I'm surprised the beer was still there after.
Well, yeah. And what happened is, this is another good part. While I was on a trip to Italy, Karen met this guy on the bus with us that his father met us. He said, I know a bunch of guys that shot up the Ballantrae Brewery and drank all the beer. He said, and Karen said, that was my husband's outfit. They stayed there. He knew it was us. But that's small world, like I say.
Yeah,
so we went up after that, after the 1st Cavalry got into Manila, we got up there, and it was peaceful. And from Manila all the way up to Baguio we went. That was our next. Remember, we're walking all the time. You know, we don't have any mechanizers, no machinery with us, no cars or nothing. Walked all the way to Baguio, cleaned that up, then went up to the Cagayan Valley. While we were up the Cagayan Valley, B-24s or 25s were bombing down below us. We could see them doing it while we were on the Cagayan Valley. They dropped parachute bombs go timing. They were timed to go off at 3 or 4 seconds. They would go off because the Japs had built in against the wall of Kingain Valley on the side. They built everything on the side so they wouldn't get hurt. But then from there, we went all the way up in the China Sea. And the 11th Airborne dropped in front of us, and we met them there. They went in after the rest of the Japs while we took it easy. We went swimming on the beach.
How many miles do you think you walked in the Philippines?
I'd say 125 altogether. Well, I got to tell you, I had callus on the bottom, brown callus, just like leather, on the bottom of my shoes because I hadn't changed them for about 6 months. And they got wet, dried off, got wet. I couldn't even take my stockings off. I had to wait till we got in the garrison so I could put my foot in solution and hold it there for a while, and then the medic would pull it right off. He says, you can take this home with you. It's about that thick all the way.
Now, were you walking on the same trail as the Bataan Death March?
No. It's Bataan Death March. We saw one of their death marches. They told the Philippine people to go to the railroad station. This is outside of Manila. And they would get them on the train and take them out of town because they knew we were close to them. So when they got the people up there, lined them all up, they shot them all and left them right there.
I guess.
Well,
yeah, horrible. Why do you think people would do that?
I don't know. They didn't want to take them with them because they were their prisoners, evidently.
Yeah.
Just like the ones that there was a guy. I'll tell you another one. In one of the towns, there was a woman who was a nurse, and she was captured. And while I was there, she knew who I was, but she didn't know where I was. But she knew that she was from Portland, Maine also. My sister-in-law, after the war, told me that that woman contacted her and that she knew I was there with that outfit.
So she was a Japanese prisoner?
No, she was American.
Oh, okay.
She was over in the Philippines, but she got caught there with the nurses during the Bataan Death March. And just one of those things, because they treated them awful, really.
And did she survive?
Yeah, she survived, because we got to the prison and emptied it. Now, I can't remember that damn thing. But that was just about it, I guess.
You got shrapnel. Tell me about how you got shrapnel.
Well, when I jumped out of the boat and got on the land, started running for protection, trying to find a place to hide, because the bomb, the mortars wouldn't hit me. One of them went off to my left, one went off. I knew one another was going to come in somewhere, and it landed in front of me and knocked me on my ass. And I ran all the way to the medic. I got to the tent. I said, I got shrapnel on my thigh. He said, okay. So he cut my pants off, and he put sulfadiazine on it. Then he said, we're going to transport you over to Lady. I said, okay. So a helicopter came down, not a helicopter, Piper Cub, and the side opened up and they slid the
Your stretcher?
Yeah, on the side. They put it in there, closed it up, and they flew me in there. Then I went to the hospital there because the hospital was in pretty good shape because they hit that before they did Luzon. So I got there, and I stayed there 2 weeks. Then from there, I joined my outfit again.
You must have been limping at that time?
No, he asked me if I said I ran all the way down there. He says, can you walk? I said, I'll try. I got up, I couldn't move. It was shock that carried me down. So I couldn't walk until I was in the hospital for a couple of weeks. Then they gave me a cane, they gave me a walker, and then eventually I could walk. And I said, I want to get back to my outfit before they leave me here. So.
Now, when those mortars were going off, did you have other friends and other soldiers that get killed?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, there was one guy from, he was from Connecticut. He said, I'd like to get home. He died, he was in a hole in an artillery shed, went in the hole and cut both his legs off, and he bled to death. But he was supposed to get married the day he got into the service, and he never did get married. And there was another guy, his pal was from Connecticut too, only he got transferred out because he was a pigeon tamer, carrier pigeons, so they wanted him so he could get his pigeons and train them to carry pigeons. So he took off also.
But did he get killed in that battle?
No, he got out all right, but he got out of there altogether, got transferred out. He'd been trying for 6 months to get transferred because he knew all about pigeons. And finally they got to him. So he said, I'm leaving, see you later. And another guy that I don't know what happened to him, but I know he got hit. His name was Tramontano from Connecticut. But I don't know what happened to him.
What were the bugs of the heat like? What was the bugs, the heat and malaria? What was that like?
Oh, that was son of a gun. Let me tell you.
Can you just tell me about it?
Yeah, well, when I finally got on I got to Japan. I had 68 points. You needed 70 points to go home. I had 68. So they said, we're going to send you into Japan. I said, okay. So I went into Japan. I was stationed there. I was eating the food and everything. And then finally, after a week or two, they say, hey, George, don't eat the food anymore because it's highly contaminated. I said, well, now you tell me. I've been eating it for 2 weeks, and Hiroshima was just one big burnt area. All sawhorses all over the place. The whole place was all burnt up. So I went from there to from Hiroshima, I went back to Tokyo, and I waited, and finally they called me and said, you're going home after 2 months. So I went to, what the heck's the name of that place there on, what's the name, where's that place where I left from the,
I don't know, you went on the.
when I got on the ship?
I don't know, honey.
Was it an island? Was it an island that you went to?
No, it was in Japan.
It was in Japan?
Yeah.
So you left Tokyo. You didn't go to Okinawa.
No, I didn't go to Okinawa.
Nagasaki.
Huh?
Nagasaki.
Nagasaki? No,
What?
Not Nagasaki.
No, not Nagasaki.
Begins with an S?
No, where I got on the ship.
I don't know, honey.
They got a tire by that name.
Michelin?
Huh?
Yeah.
They got a tire by that name.
Okay, well, we'll think about that. But
Yokohama?
Yokohama?
Yokohama, that's it. They sent me to Yokohama, and I got on the Intrepid aircraft carrier. And going home. But before that, they wanted to give me all kinds of medals and stuff if I stayed there another year. And I said, no, I want to go home and see my mother. I want to go, because I've been overseas almost 3 years, 2 3/4 years. So I went and got on the ship. As we were sailing out, the Intrepid sailed out, we were in a typhoon. Would you believe it? You could see all these ships going up and down and wind blowing. I said, good thing I was on a big ship, let me tell you. Well, I had 1 case of malaria on that ship. So I stayed there for a while anyway. I was sick. I was sick in the dog. I was shaking and everything. I thought I was going to die anyway. So, so I get on the ship, and while I'm walking around there, I looked and I saw this one guy in there. So I hollered to him, hey, don't I know you? And he says, I don't know. I says, aren't you from Maine? He says, yeah. Are you Washington Avenue? He says, yeah. Her brother's wife's sister, her brother. Her brother's husband's sister.
No, uncle.
His name,
Uncle.
John Kermanese from Munjoy Hill.
Wow.
So I said, yeah, I know you. So I stayed and talked to him for a while. And it was nice to know somebody on the ship, let me tell you. Finally, when I got off in San Francisco, they gave me $133 and told me to find my best way home. I never forgot it.
Wow.
So I took the train.
You say thank you very much.
Yeah, that's what they said. But you know, the worst part, the best part, worst part, everybody gave a bonus. Maine gave you the finger. That's the only thing we got from the state. They didn't give us nothing. So every big state got bonuses and bonuses and bonuses. But evidently we're a poor state, so we didn't get nothing. But later on, they want to pass a cigarette tax if they give a bonus, and we voted it down. We didn't want another tax.
Well, let me ask you this: did you ever have? Did you ever cry when you were over there? Like, was it horrifying?
I could tell you lots of times when I was getting shelled in the hole there, I was scared to death. I never thought I'd ever make it home. I'll be honest with you. I thought, well, my day will come, I guess, so I'll be in there. While we were in the ground living on Bougainville, we used to throw grenades in the thoroughfare to make sure nobody would come in. And they would blow up, in case they were in there. That's things like that. I never thought I'd get home. Never. But lots of times when you're alone, you don't cry a hell of a lot, but you do an awful lot of praying.
You saw a lot of death.
Yeah.
How did that? Does that help you deal with death later on in life?
Well, no, I saw all that stuff, and I knew that eventually it would come to me. It's just time. But I've seen our own guys who fool around with weapons that don't know what they're doing get wounded by them weapons. I had a kid, he was in artillery, he was visiting a friend, he was sitting down, he wanted to see the 45, he showed it to him, he squeezed the trigger, hit him in the shoulder, went right through the back of his lungs, killed him. But mistakes like that happen. You gotta remember one thing, don't let anybody else near you with a weapon. I was always taught, if anybody points a weapon at you, he aims to kill you. So if he points a weapon at you, shoot him before he gets a chance to. That's all.
When you saw Hiroshima, did you understand what happened? I mean, did you know much about nuclear weapons?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I know what happened. But you know, the funniest part of it is they told us that nothing would go there for 10,000 years. 3 years later, buildings popping up, gardens and everything. So they didn't know.
Now, Tokyo.
Maybe that's what keeping me alive.
I mean,
Huh?
You had that contaminated food.
Well, yeah, I ate that contaminated food. Hiroshima and the other one was what?
Nagasaki?
Yeah, Nagasaki, yeah. But
Yeah.
a lot of... One thing about Japanese, well, they were taught from childhood as they were growing up that if you die for the emperor, you go to heaven. That's why they had a lot of courage. We know when we die, we ain't gonna breathe no more. But they figured they were gonna go to heaven and have all kinds of good time. And that's why they were treated the way they were. And that's why they were crazy, like they say. Because I could see them, you're firing at them, and they're jumping over the barbed wire, and they got their men hanging on the barbed wire, and they're stepping on them, trying to get over them to get in there. They just keep coming. And it's crazy, like I say. But they were told from childhood, you die for the emperor, you go to heaven.
So were they screaming bonsai?
They scream banzai. They go like heck, though, let me tell you.
It must have been really scary to see so many.
Yeah, well, it is scary, let me tell you. Because that's when you learn to fire rapid range. Go like hell. Fire as you can't aim, you just got to fire a big bag back and forth. But the best weapon in the jungle was a BAR. Because all you had to do was lay it on its side, squeeze it, and 16 shots would come right up. 16. That would protect you for a while.
It's a pretty heavy gun, isn't it?
It's a heavy gun, yeah. But you got 2 or 3 guys that carry ammunition for you. And every one of those clips has 16 rounds in it. And it's really a good jungle gun.
What's that song, All I Want is a BAR, honey? All
Yeah.
I Want.
Well, you know, like I say, the mortar, 60 millimeter mortar, everybody learned to fire that. And they had a sight on the right-hand side and give you the depth and everything. And you fire that, you fire every weapon the infantry has, every one. Then when you have every one company of weapons, and that's the one that has, in the division, you have one company of weapons, and they carry water-cooled heavy machine guns. And they keep 81 mortars, too, the big stuff. See, but the small stuff, the infantry can carry, and they can operate with it, which is great.
Now, did you ever have any tanks with you at all?
The tanks were too heavy. We had a light tank. We had only light tanks.
Stuart M1? Is that not the M1?
No, they had 30 caliber machine gun on it.
Oh, yeah.
But the tank was light tanks because of swamps and stuff. They get bogged down. So that's why we didn't have many tanks. The only time we used tanks, I remember, was on Bougainville. There were 2 tanks after the Japs took 2 or 3 of our perimeters. They occupied them. They sent the light tanks up to get them back. And that's what they did.
Did you ever see MacArthur?
Yeah, he went right by me, smoking a pipe. Yeah. I was about 15 feet away from him when he went by. We were walking up the aisle across the bridge, and he drove by in a Jeep. He's a pretty smart guy, really. He would have been president if he didn't fool around and try to take, but he was right. Take China now, don't wait till later. He should have gone right in.
Right. I think, was it Korea that he wanted?
Yeah, after Korea, he wanted to go into China, but they didn't want him to. He should have gone in. Now I'm going to tell you a story about Korea. After I got out of the service, my friend and I, you probably know who he is, Ray Cololo. He lived on Newbury Street. He and I went to school together. So our teacher, when we were in grammar school, was a guy named Johnny Ham. And he taught at Staples School when I was a kid. He taught me how to play ball and everything. And when we get out of the service, he said to me, Raymond said to me, let's join the reserves. I said, what? He said, let's join the reserves. I said, are you crazy? Another war breaks out, you know what? You're already trained, you're ready to go. He said, another war will never break. I said, okay. Well, he joined with his brother, Jim, joined the reserves in South Portland, Naval Reserve. And they joined, and Johnny Ham was in charge. So he said, George, are you going to? I said, are you kidding? I'm home for good. So I stayed. And when the Korean War broke out, Raymond was the first guy selected to go to Korea. You know why? He was a radio man, and they needed him. So they put him on an LST. You know what he was doing? Picking dead bodies out of the Ho Chi Minh River, where all frozen and dead, putting them on his boat to bring him back. And when he got out, after that, I said to him, are you going back to the reserves? He said, are you crazy? Crazy? I'm not going anywhere but home. So I guess he knew I was right.
So tell me about the day that you came home and saw your mother.
Well, I came home, everybody was gone. My father, urban renewal and everything, and my father bought a house in South Portland. I didn't know it, so I finally found him anyway. I went over there, and it was right near the water, so I was really pleased with that. So
you must have been a little shocked that your house was gone?
well, when I got home, I couldn't work. I was 21 years old when I got home. And from 21 to 26, 25, I couldn't work at all. I was in the Marine Hospital every 2 or 3 months with malaria. Finally, the doctor told me, if you're gonna get rid of this, don't lay down and fight it. He said, when you got it, you shake and fight it. I said, yeah, I'll probably have a heart attack and die. He said, well, that's better than suffering all your life, isn't it? Yeah, I said, okay. So anyhow, I stayed there, and I went through, I was 25 years old when I thought I lost. I finally got it. I said, I hope I never get it back again. And that was the last time I had an attack. But I did get colds that were really rough. When I got a cold, I really got a good one. And I did that for a while. And I finally went on, and at 25 years old, I went to work. I went to work at the Maine General Hospital, which is the Maine, what is it?
Maine Medical?
Maine Medical.
Yeah.
I worked there as an orderly. I went in and got a job because I wanted to work. I got paid twice a month, and I got free meals, which is great. So I was in the operating room. You know, I would after the operation, I would clean the place out, make sure it was sanitary. And they had a little refrigerator on the side of the wall. So while we're cleaning the place out, the nurses came in, you want coffee? I said, yeah, I'll have a cup. They give us a cup of coffee. So I'm sitting there, you got any cream? The refrigerator right there. I opened it up, there's a bottle of cream, milk in there. I took some, put it in my coffee, started drinking it. I said, what's in that bag right there? They said, that's the lung we just took out of the guy. I said, you keep it in the refrigerator? He said, it's going down to the freezer and be burnt later. I said, well, I ain't drinking this coffee. That was the end of that drinking coffee.
Now isn't it interesting that you experienced the horrors of war, but even though the lung would still get you?
That's right. I wasn't going to drink that crap. I said, no way, not somebody's lung in there.
You've had nuclear contaminated food.
Yeah, and I wasn't taking any more chance. That's
said,
it.
Probably smart, right?
Yeah.
So the moment you came home, the first time you saw your mother, what was that like? The first moment you saw your mother after the war?
When I first met my mother, she grabbed me and hugged me. That was the best part. She said, when they gave me the letter, I thought you had died. That's when I got wounded. They sent a letter home. What do you call it? Whatever. She got that. She said, I thought you had died. And she cried quite a bit. But my brother was already home. My other brother, he was already home having a good time while I was still on my way. Well, anyhow, that's what happened.
Yeah. So, how about your dad?
Oh, my father he was in World War I, you know. My father was in this country in World War I, and he left here, left my mother and children to go fight in Italy when Italy was with the United States back in World War I. And he went back to fight for Italy, and he lost a brother named Michael. And then he came back. When he came back, he brought his brothers back with him because he had 2 or 3 houses on Deer Street at that time. So he brought him back, and he brought my cousins back. He brought all the family back. You probably know the Lapamatas. He brought them all back too. But my father, if you look at what is it in New York there, Ellis Island, you'll find that all these Lapamatas are all not called Lapamatas. They're all called Pacillos, because my father gave him his name to get him into this country. And that's it.
Now, your brother, did he have a tough time over in Europe?
Well, he was in...
maybe just say your brother, so for the camera.
My brother Jimmy. Yeah, well, he was in 4 or 5 campaigns over there. But he always told me, he said he was on one of these anti-aircraft trucks, you know, with 4 machine guns, one of those. That's what he operated. But he took his training down in El Paso, Texas. And he was, him and Carol Nappy were together. They grew up together. So, but you didn't ask me about the bootleggers.
Tell me about the bootleggers.
Oh, yeah. Well, the bootleggers were on Deer Street. And that's the guy that the bootlegger eventually became Nappy Distributors. Eventually. But he was the biggest bootlegger at the time.
So, did you ever end up with a lot of post-traumatic stress from the war?
No, I never had any of that. I don't know why, but I never did.
Yeah. Did a lot of other guys have a lot of hard time?
Oh, a lot of people had it, but a lot of them would crack up. But I never had it. I don't know.
I mean, you You must have been mentally strong to be able to handle this.
Well, yeah, I thought about it. I said, this is a hell of a way to die. Gee. But it would just go in and go out. But I did a lot of praying, you know. I'm not going to tell you I never prayed. I prayed every day. Hope I get home. You know, before I left, my mother used to pray for me all the time. When I asked her, who are you praying for? She says, you. Wow.
Yeah, wow. Now, when you get back from, how did you end up getting to CMP? You ended up working for Central Maine Power?
No, when I get back, my brother, he worked. See, my brother didn't go in the service because he had 6 kids. So one of the kids got to stay back. I was supposed to stay back because I was the youngest. But he decided, I said, you stay back, I'll go. So I went. And he had 6 kids, and he raised the 6 kids, which he was in the service, too. They let him out. He was a staff sergeant in Cape Elizabeth. He was one of these guys that opened the net, let the submarines in, and close it.
At Fort Williams?
Yeah, that's what he did. But when I went in, he decided to get out. And that way he stayed here all through the war. And I didn't mind because I was a young guy and I wanted excitement anyway. And that was excitement, let me tell you. I had a lot of it.
Did you ever land on Wake Island at all?
I went on one island, I can't remember the name of it, and made an amphibious landing. You know, it was all sandy. I can't remember the name of it, but it's in the Pacific.
Yeah.
It could be Wake, it could be almost any. One of those islands we practiced as we were in a convoy. As we picked up more ships, we would make an amphibious landing, you know, so we get in there.
What was when you landed on Bougainville, was that an amphibious landing? Did you do that?
No, I didn't have to do an amphibious landing because the Marines made the landing and they hit a company of Japs and they wiped them right out. So they gave us a go-ahead. So the 37 went in and cleaned the island out and protected the fighter and bomber strip so they could bomb Rabaul from here. And that's what they did. And we were just to protect them, to make sure that no Jap would get in there. And
what did you think of the Marines? So what did you think of the Marines?
well, I'm going to tell you. I got a map that shows you. You think of this. The Marines had 5 infantry divisions in the Pacific. The 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th, and then another division, I can't remember what the amphibious, not an amphibious, it was, what do you call these guys? Explorer division. There's 6 divisions altogether. You know how many Army divisions there were in the Pacific?
20? 20?
21. And you know what? Every Marine division that hit an island, after they hit it, the Marines took their PA, took pictures and everything else, the Army came in and cleaned it up. That's the only way they got all that publicity, because they had a better PA system than we did. Because in Europe, the Army was getting all the credit. They had to give credit to the Marines, because the Marines come under the Navy. And do you know the Army has more ships than the Navy? Well, they do. You know, how do you think they get those big tanks into Europe? And they get LSTs that open up and the tanks roll away down. They're all controlled by Army. Oh. Well, one thing, You know why they referred, before you go, I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
You know why they referred to a ship as a she?
I don't.
As a she.
I don't.
Say, she's a beauty.
Yeah. Why? I don't.
The only time you see the end of it, underneath, is when it's in dry dock.
So you sing a Filipino song for him.
That's right. That's the only time you see under the ship is when it's in dry dock. That's why they refer. And another thing, you always put a boat on a ship. You can't put a ship on a boat.
That's true.
Jordan, sing the Filipino song you know.
Huh?
Sing your Filipino song.
You got a Filipino song? Your Filipino
Sing your
song.
Filipino song.
Oh, yeah. Ever me sing?
Oh,
You want me to sing it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
what is this going to be? What are you going to do?
Huh?
Tell me what this is.
This is, it's a love song. I always like love songs because you get a lot more sugar with love than you do anything else. Kay ganda mo'y dalaga, katula mo'y siyampaga, nababaliw ako. Kay ganda mo'y bangko, mahinin kang dalaga, katula mo'y siyampaga. Your puso ko'y sa tuwina, sasabahin ka sinta. That's Tagalog.
To garlic?
Yeah, that's the native tongue, Tagalog.
Yeah. Do you ever sing that to Ging, the Filipino girl that sings karaoke?
Yeah, I sang it to her. She got quite a kick out of it.
Can you sing me an Italian song?
Uh,
In Italian.
Well, the only way I can sing Italian, the only song I know is I Want to Go Home With You.
No, that's not in Italian.
No,
Do you know any songs in Italian?
no, I never learned Italian song. What's it?
Sing Way Maria something.
Oh, yeah. Way Marie, quando una diversa per te, fammi dormire, questa notte abbracciata per te. Way Marie, quando una diversa per te, fammi dormire, way Marie. Oh, Marie hit her with a brick. Oh, Marie hit her with a brick. What a sucker she made out of me. She took all my money. Then she called me honey. Oh, Marie, what a sucker she made out of me. Took all my money. Way Marie. Bravo, Giuseppe.
Now, what about an army song?
Ah,
I don't want to be your honey. Is that, I don't want to. Is it? Any army songs come on?
well, I don't know. I don't think it's.
Japanese songs.
How about a Japanese song? Japanese?
Yeah, Japanese. Mochi mochi kami yo kami sam yo seku no chi de ayumi odo ayumi no noi no wani do sit so nani no ka.
So that was when you were hanging out in Japanese karaoke bars back in the day?
No. You know, they didn't have karaoke.
No, I know.
Tell them what happened in Italy when you did that.
Huh?
Tell them what happened in Rome when you did that.
In Rome. You sang that song in Rome?
You sang that song in Rome. Tell them.
Oh, yeah. Well, we were in Naples and near Rome or somewhere. We went to a restaurant and we were in there eating. And I saw a whole pile of Japanese on vacation. So I walked over to them. And I bowed, and they all bowed, and I sang that song. And when I left, they all got up and bowed to me. They got quite a kick out of it.
So,
E-
yeah, go ahead.
Every one of them, when they left, they all bowed as they went by me.
That's awesome. So, when you saw those Japanese, how did you feel about them after having fought them? You know, knowing what you went through and how the Japanese were. How did you feel about them?
Well, I felt pretty good because when I went there, when I went to Japan, there was nobody on the streets. It was bare. They heard we're going to kill them all. So when I got there was nobody there. But as I've been there a while, they kept filtering in one or two at a time. And finally they came in. They realized we weren't going to do anything to them. But they were scared to death, really. They thought we were going to kill them all. But we were civilized people. But my job was take all the aristocrats around, show them the area. And that's what I did. I took them all around. I had all young girls, USO girls and everything. Take them around, show them all the places and stuff. And that's it.
Did you get near did you go into the Emperor's Palace at all or get near it?
No, never got near it.
I guess they didn't want to touch him because he was a god to the Japanese, right?
When I sent home a battle flag, a rifle, and a samurai sword. Those are the 3 items they had. I put them in a box and mailed them. When I got them home, I gave the battle flag away to a Marine pilot. He wanted it. He gave me a pint of whiskey. So I traded that for, and I gave the rifle to a guy who was in the Navy, wanted to go hunting with. I gave it to him. He worked with me at Central Maine Power. I gave him that. The sword I gave to my grandson. He's got that.
Yeah, of course the rifle that rifle couldn't fire very fast. The Japanese rifle, right?
Single shot, bolt action.
Yeah.
All they can do, by the time you get one shot off, I can get 8. Bang, 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 bang. Yeah. That's why I say, even the carbine had quite a few shots in it too. Every gun that we had was to make the other people have lousy guns. They didn't know what a good gun was. And even later on in years, all guns are now automatic.
Was there anything else you want to talk about?
Well, I can't think of anything. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I know what I want to talk about. Did you know Louis Flaherty? He was a mailman on Munjoy Hill. He married a Cololo girl.
Okay.
Lugri Cololo.
I know a Peter Colillo. I went to school with a Peter Colillo. He's probably a grandson or something.
That's probably his son. You mean, is he young or old?
He's my age. He's 57, so he's younger. Yeah, Peter Colillo.
Well, now wait a minute. There's a Peter Colillo who played for the Little Boy Blues.
Okay. I don't think
With Don Drossel. He played with Don Drossel, those guys. So that Peter Colillo you know is probably
his son.
Frank Colillo or Don Colillo's son.
Yeah.
Now, they lived on Pont Street on the hill. Mm-hmm. And Sammy Cavallaro lived in front in that barber shop. And across the street was George Piacentini's barroom. And in the house in front of that, my brother lived there. My brother Jim, who died 93 years old. And behind Piacentini was John Tucci. He lived there.
Yeah, I know the Chuchis. Yeah.
And as you go up, on the left, there was the guy came from Florida. He worked for the post office.
Were the Leos around there? Leos?
Who?
The Leos, I was thinking, no. There was what's the store that right across from Sammy's. It was it not Cortucci's? It was
Well,
Colello, not Colello.
it used to be Jack's Lunch.
Yeah, okay.
Years ago before Piacentini got it.
Yeah.
Jack's Lunch was the first the first owner of that bar.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember delivering beer there.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And the other guy was Castellucci, who owned the Sportsman's Grill down the end of Congress Street.
Right by Forest Street. Forest Street and Congress. Not Forest Avenue, but Forest Street.
Yeah.
Right down there, yeah. And I was gonna say, do you miss the old Portland? What do you think of the new Portland?
Well, I never go in Portland anyway.
Yeah.
But
You miss the
I
meetings?
think it's kind of weird the way, because I used to know all the good spots. I knew all the bar rooms. I knew them all. Splendid, going up, and
Stardust.
Hollywood. I knew,
Stardust.
yeah,
Yeah.
and there used to be quite a few bars.
Yeah. Now, do you? I guess the final question I have is: so you feel like you've had a good life?
Yeah, I've had a good life. I mean, how perfect can life be as it is for me? I've had a wonderful life, and as I got older, I thought I was going to suffer. I didn't suffer a whole lot because I have everybody, like my wife, takes good care of me. She's a good cook. I eat well. I eat very well. And
How'd you meet your wife? How did you meet your wife?
I met her at Elks. Yeah, George Piacentini asked me, he said, "What do you think of her?" I said, "She's pretty nice." He said, "I'll fix you up."
She's a little bit younger.
Yeah, well, that's it, see?
You must be doing something right.
Yeah.
So your good living is worked for you.
Yeah. She's over there laughing.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm glad I could do this for
Yeah.
you.
If you think you want to do another one, if you get some more you want to think about, we can always do another recording session. You know what I mean?
All right.
If you want to think about some other things,
Well,
I mean, there's a lot to squeeze into 97 years. We've only
I know it.
talked an
Yeah.
hour and a half. So
Well, I want to tell you that I had some good relatives. My uncle Pat Labamata was a barber on Veranda Street, and he was always called me, want to go to the races out Scarborough Downs. He always called me because nobody else would take him, so he called me and I'd take him. He used to give me free haircuts all the time, so that's why I took him. Then I had another uncle who lived on Little Middle. His name was Lawrence Lapamata, and he was pretty nice. He had a son named Jim, and he died young. He had lung trouble, and but he had 3 daughters and 3 boys. I think all 3 boys are dead. And then there was another uncle, Francesca. He's the guy that married De Diego. When her husband died, he married Mrs. De Diego. And the last one of their boys just died. His name was Joe Labamata. But his sister, Philly, is still alive, and she's the last one.
And your father brought them all over, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. Yay.
Okay. All right, you're welcome.